and it doesn't need to lose.
Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, it's Wednesday, so we got to check in with our very own Dr. Gerald Horn with the Horn Report to talk about everything that's happening in Ukraine, talking about the LA City Council, and so much more. We'll have those conversations. Also, I'm going to be checking in and talking about how to take your fashion designer, how one fashion designer is taking design to the next level. We'll be talking to Patrick Cupid about some of the things that he's doing and so much more. So, folks, stay tuned. We got a lot coming at you on today's edition of The Culture. Make sure y'all keep streaming at us, streaming right there at blackstarnetwork.com. Stay with us. We're coming right back. Folks, welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation as we are streaming live right now on blackstarnetwork.com. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad, and so excited to have these conversations with you. We got some dynamic guests that are coming up. But first and foremost, y'all know how we do. It is Wednesday. And so we got to get some insight, we got to get some analysis, and we got to do our weekly check-in with the professor of history and African American studies from the University of Houston to get today's Horn Report. Let's go. Peace, Dr. Gerald Horn. How are you today, sir?
It's all good. What about you?
I'm good. I am good. We got so much to talk about, Dr. Horn. So let's jump right in. First and foremost, let's talk about some of the national stuff, the international stuff, and then we'll talk about some of the national stuff. The international stuff is what we're seeing in Ukraine. Of course, there has been some big developments in this war that Russia has waged against Ukraine. The big development that has come up over the past week has been the bombing of that bridge that serves as a pipeline for Russian supplies during this whole war effort in Crimea. And the bombing of that has been a huge strategic bombing. And the last that I heard, Dr. Horn, Ukraine did not take full responsibility for that bombing, but they did not also deny that they did the bombing as well. So what's that? And as a result of that, we saw, of course, President Putin respond saying, we're going to do strikes, missile strikes all over Ukraine at this point. That is going to keep coming. The flurry of shelling is going to come. Now, this has opened the door, of course, to his impatience, his anger, his frustration, and he has stepped up his rhetoric, has not turned down the talk about use of nuclear weapons, and America is now preparing for what may happen. Whereas they're asking the big question in the White House, how close are we to Armageddon? And this is the big question. This is Biden's Armageddon nuclear warning builds an increasingly worries about a desperate Putin. And this is not looking good at all. You've been talking about it. We have been discussing it. But first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about this bridge bombing and then a response to that. What can we expect now, Dr. Horn, to happen over these next few days in Ukraine? Because we already saw that there was some missile strikes in Kyiv, the capital. So what can we expect?
It was a very dangerous turn of events, this bombing of the bridge. I should say parenthetically that those who are interested in military tactics should have the takeaway that it's more than a notion to bring down a well-constructed bridge, because that bridge was up and running virtually unscathed about 24 hours later. But in any case, as you suggest, Moscow took that as an opportunity to escalate in a way we have not seen since this so-called special military operation began in February 2022. I think that Mr. Biden needs to cool his jets with all of this talk about Armageddon, that is to say, the end of the world. In fact, President Macron of France explicitly reprimanded him for doing so. And by the way, another epical event of the past few days is that President Macron of France called together European nations, did not invite the United States, did not invite Russia either, for that matter, because I think the Europeans are beginning to suspect, particularly in France, that they're on a runaway train and they have no influence over the conductors. And so they're dealing with an energy crisis. You know that Mr. Macron has started wearing turtlenecks nowadays. He's trying to popularize them as France and Western Europe about to go into a bitter winter. And your audience should also recognize that there is a principle in the Pentagon, the US military, enunciated by the late Pentagon chief Don Rumsfeld, that if you have a problem, the way to deal with it is to enlarge it. Now, don't try that at home. If you have a problem with your partner or spouse, don't try to enlarge it to deal with it. That's the sort of blinkered thinking that you see in Washington, D.C. And so don't be surprised if this war spreads to the Moscow ally, that is Belarus. Don't be surprised if other nations, such as Cyprus, are dragged into this conflict. You know that the Ukrainian foreign minister was just in Africa. As we speak, there's a vote at the United Nations about this Russian operation in Ukraine, where Washington has been twisting arms of African leaders to get them to sign on. They'll probably be punished and pulverized if they do not sign on. So this crisis does not show any signs of abating or being diluted, and that is utterly dangerous.
Yeah, to say utterly dangerous is saying it lightly. This is, and we've been saying this, Doc. Never, anytime two nations go to war, and I know they have war plans, war strategies, but it's almost like making mockery of something that is inevitable, which is war does not go according to a plan. There is no quote unquote certainty in war, right? I think Putin, I think President Putin thought that, and I heard President Biden say this, that he probably thought, Putin thought that he could pretty much invade Ukraine and he didn't expect them to fight back. Like, all of this is so uncertain. So now, months into this conflict, we're really in uncharted territory. we're really in uncharted territory. I think that there was this idea, and you tell me, your thoughts on this, but I think there was this idea that this was going to end very quickly. And now we're seeing that it's not ending. You've been telling us that in everything from resources to gas to oil to grain, I want to get your take on what's happening in Africa. All of these things are being affected. But the one main part that is staying constant in this whole situation is Putin's decision to stay involved in this conflict. And so all of these other things are happening. Everybody else is changing their plans, but Putin is still moving forward and saying, no, we're going to keep moving. We're going to keep marching forward. And I don't know how any war plan, any war strategy takes that into account. How do you prepare for something like that?
Well, I did a book on boxing a few years ago, and you're probably familiar with a statement from Mike Tyson, where he says that everybody has a plan when they get into the ring until they get hit in the face. Then after they get hit in the face, the plan goes out the window. And I think that this is an apt description of what's taking place in the battlefield in Ukraine. I think to begin with, the Moscow plan underestimated the fighting mettle of the Ukrainians, which led to a Ukrainian offensive in August a few months ago. And I think overall, the United States and its allies have underestimated the impact of Russia on the global economy in terms of grain exports, in terms of energy exports, et cetera. You know that the late Senator John McCain of Arizona, former GOP presidential nominee, was famous, if not infamous, for suggesting that Russia was just a gas station masquerading as a great nation. And that was part of the underestimation, not only of Russia, but the assistance that it would get from China. Because I think that after the dust clears, what we're going to find out is that Russia has been able to stand up for oh so many months because of under the table and on top of the table assistance from the People's Republic of China.
And let's talk about as you were talking about China. I mean, there has been other nations, other continents that are not in cahoots with the United States on this whole process. Africa, I know that's something that you have often kept our eyes on. What is going on with African nations now where they're not in lockstep with the United States, even though the U.S. The U.S. representative to the UN has been trying to get Africa on board. President Biden is having trouble. And Keenan, if you want to show that, he's scrambling to avert cracks in the pro-Ukraine coalition. And one of the groups that he's reached out to, it says it in his article, he has held hours of conversations in recent months with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, and other foreign leaders who have not always supported the Western coalition in support of Ukraine, urging them to stand firm against Russian President Vladimir Putin. Why isn't Africa a little bit hesitant about this? And I also read, Dr. Horn, that Africa is still being inundated with a lot of quote unquote Russian propaganda around this war that they have not weeded out from their media outlets and information stations. So where does Africa stand on this?
Well, I think Africa is trying to be neutral, and I think we'll get an idea of how that's faring by the end of the day, because as we speak, there is a vote taking place at the United Nations General Assembly that Washington has pushed this resolution seeking to denounce and castigate Russia. I expect a number of abstentions, basically votes to say that Africa is neutral, because I think that Africa feels that if it signs on wholly with the North Atlantic countries led by the United States, it could alienate China. And if you look at major infrastructure, there's to say building of airports, roads, highways, stadiums, major skyscrapers, et cetera, that capital mostly comes from China. And so Africa does not want to alienate the People's Republic of China. But if you look at issues like education and healthcare in particular, that aid oftentimes comes from the United States of America. So there's no incentive for African nations to alienate either bloc. Their incentive is to try to remain neutral and keep their heads down and keep getting paid by both sides.
Is that wise?
I think so. Because I don't there's a lot of downside to alienating China right now. And there's downside to alienating the United States of America and its allies right now. I think that their policy, and keep in mind too, that historians have instructed us, not necessarily including myself, that it was a mistake for African nations to take a partisan position during the Cold War conflict of decades between Moscow and Washington. Now, some of the same people who made that kind of analysis have reversed field and are suggesting that now Africa should take a partisan position. I don't buy it.
And you know, just very quickly, you know, what is the sentiment of Africans here in the United States? I mean, do they just, you know, we are a country where a lot of our African brothers and sisters find refuge, find a home here in the United States, right? And in cities across this country. So is this war or is this struggle on the African, and I don't want to use the term African American, but you know what I mean? It's like, is for the African community in America, is this something that they are concerned about?
I think so, but I would suspect, although I haven't done a poll, that Africans resident in the United States are probably taking positions that echo that of the Congressional Black Caucus. And as you know, the Congressional Black Caucus is all in with regard to supporting the U.S. position on Ukraine. In fact, we've talked on your program, as you know, about the bill carried by Congressman Gregory Meeks of Southeast Queens, a leading member of the Congressional Black Caucus, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, which calls upon the State Department to penalize and sanction African states that do not go along with the U.S. position.
Right.
And I suspect that many Africans who oftentimes assimilate into African American culture, certainly not all, I suspect that they're following the lead of Congressional Black Caucus.
That's all I'm gonna say to that, Doc. Taylor checked it, Doctor, and said Africa doesn't want any enemies. Bring on the money. Bring on the money. Show me the money. That's what you want our support. Show us the money. Show us, and you'll get some support. That is very interesting. All right, let's bring it right here home, Doc, because this is in your neck of the woods where we're seeing a conflation of politics, racism, backdoor dealing, and a high level of mistrust in the government here. We can talk about other nations, but America got a real problem in government right now. Looking at the saga around the LA City Council, you know, when I heard this, take a look, folks. Now that we know Nuri Martinez, who is the former city council president, she has resigned. Ron Herrera, who is in charge, who was the former head of the Labor Federation, he has stepped down. The only two left are Kevin De Leon, the city councilman in Los Angeles City, and Gil Cedillo. These individuals still have not decided to resign. As to why, I don't know. But here's the thing. This thing is going off. I mean, this is hitting all types of high levels. Of course, President Biden weighed in on this matter yesterday as well. But when we look at this, and I want to make sure I want to bring up my notes on this, because the question is that has been asked, can they be removed? And this is what the LA Times shared when this question is asked. Take a look at this, folks. The LA Times reported can these LA council members be removed? The short answer is no. The city charter has a provision for council members to suspend an elected officer only if they are awaiting trial in criminal proceedings, as was the case with former councilman Jose Huizar and suspended councilman member Mark Ridley Thomas. according to the LA City Charter, there are rare situations in which a council member is removed, but it's unlikely that any could apply in this scenario. Short of them resigning, a recall election would likely be the only way to remove Martinez or De Leon from office. Cedillo does not have enough time left on his term to qualify for recall proceedings, according to city rules. Cedillo is, he's planning to, I think he has to leave office by December anyway. So he's still there. Martinez is left. De Leon, he's, it's still a big question mark. What do we make of this? What do you make of this? This is madness right now.
It's a very unfortunate turn of events. Nuri Martinez, the major culprit, the former president of the LA City Council, spoke of a black child as being a, quote, little monkey, although she used the Spanish phrase for that. She spoke in very hostile and disparaging terms towards people south of the border from her ancestral homeland, speaking of Mexico, referring in an ugly way to people from Oaxaca in Mexico. She made disparaging comments about Armenians, who are a major voting bloc in California, and Southern California specifically, and Jewish Americans as
That's
well.
That's the one, Doc.
So
That's the one.
she was forced to step down from the city council presidency. I expect her to be followed by these other persons. But what you should focus on is that Ron Herrera, who was also Latino, was in on the conversation, did not object to the ugliness. He stepped down as president of the labor movement, the County Federation of Labor in Los Angeles. He has been replaced on an interim level by a leader of a gangster-influenced union. Speaking of the Hollywood unions and the television unions, if you look at who's behind the camera in terms of all these cultural products, they're mostly members of the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, which for decades has been dominated by organized crime. So when I see that kind of coup that has taken place, it makes me quite suspicious, because I'm not a coincidence theorist. I don't think that necessarily all of these are coincidences. The fact that somehow Ron Herrera, who was actually fairly progressive, gets replaced by somebody to his right. And plus, you need to realize that what's happening in Los Angeles is a microcosm of what's happening nationally. There is a shift to the right. We're going to see this, I'm afraid to say, with regard to these elections, midterm congressional elections, determine who controls the House and the Senate in a few weeks. We talked last week about Herschel Walker, who's still in a neck-and-neck race to be the next U.S. senator from Georgia.
I don't get it.
He's backed by the ultra-right. This is also a global trend. We see the rise in Italy of fascists. We thought we had gotten rid of fascists by the end of World War II in 1945. They've begun to raise their ugly heads. You see the same thing in Sweden, which we thought was some sort of bastion of social democracy, but the fascists are on the march there. And you see it locally in Los Angeles. And so we have a real problem in this country and in this world. I think that in order to dig ourselves out of this deep hole in which we find ourselves, that is to say, I salute the protesters at the LA City Council who are hectoring and shouting and screaming at the council members. But at a certain point, we're going to have to try to come up with some sort of way to dig ourselves out of this crisis. And I think one way possibly to emerge from this predicament stronger than we were before is to ask for mediation by the president of Mexico. After all, the alleged culprits are all Mexican Americans. When a U.S. national gets in trouble in Iran, the president of the United States speaks out. You had a member of the LA City Council who speaks disparagingly about people from Mexico in her city. The president of Mexico has a basis for getting involved. And you should also know that Martin Luther King III has taken a historic interest in Mexico. He's friendly with the president of Mexico. In fact, I end my book on Texas with a vignette of them huddling together. So I think what we really need is some out-of-the-box thinking, because this is a major crisis that is disrupting many lives. And
major crisis.
I haven't even mentioned the sheriff of LA County, Mr. Villanueva, who's
Right.
on the record of putting a bullseye on every Black person in LA, he says that anti-Asian violence in Southern California and in California generally is perpetrated by young Black men. That's like putting a bullseye on our backs. It's like trying to get China mad at us. We got enough problems.
Right.
And so this is a real crisis.
So I mean, you pointed out two things, and I think they need to be discussed. One is, getting some level of mediation, because we had Dr. Tanya Hernandez on the show yesterday from Fordham University, and I'm talking about, how do we bridge this gap between Black and brown communities? And she mentioned that there had to be some racial literacy that had to be done. And by LA having such a very, very a long history of racism, of Black and brown. First and foremost, I'm blown away that Nuri Martinez was even allowed to be in public office for this long, given the fact of her views, right? But I do feel like, along with that racial literacy, there needs to be something else, because this is going to be a problem. And this is a problem, Latinos make up about 22% of LA City. White people make up about 48 to 49%. Black folks, we make up 8%. Asians make up 11. Then you have other communities that make up the final part of that. So we're looking at a situation here where Black folks don't really have the numbers, and we need to figure out, well, how do we still have the power? How do we still get the representation? So this idea of talking to the president of Mexico, bringing him into this conversation, it needs to be had, because my great concern about this is looking at the next generation, Dr. Horn, is like, how does the next generation of Latinos, how does the next generation that's coming after, that are the children of a Nuri Martinez, right? That are the children of those she offended. How are they going to grow up in a city like, and what is there going to be their personal politics? How are they going to understand race? How are they going to understand that LA being the way it's constructed and laid out, you got Black and brown every other house. You know what I mean? We're all in the same community. So how do we make that? So that's my concern. Is like, okay, if something, and I'm saying something dramatic, it can't be a press release. It can't be an apology statement. There has to be some dramatic efforts that need to be made to ensure that both of these communities understand, like, look, we are all oppressed. I put it on my Twitter. I tweeted out, Doc, I said, when Black and brown fight, only white supremacy wins. At this point, something dramatic has to happen. And I know that this is a this is a black eye on the years of work that many Black folks and folks from the Latino community, those who have worked on the ground to build those coalitions, to build those relationships, it's a huge black eye to those efforts. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what do we do as Black Angelenos, as Latino Angelenos, and even as folks outside of the LA County, LA City area? What can everyday folks do?
Where everyday folks are oftentimes members of unions. And that's why, it was important that Ron Herrera, the leader of LA unions, was the first person to step down. And that's why, B, it's very important to get the interim leader, who, as noted, is a representative of a gangster Jim Crow union, to step back. We should also encourage the Service Employees International Union, which has a substantial Black and brown membership, is heavily represented in the corridors of power of labor. We need to get the SEIU, which also has branches from the Atlantic to the Pacific, to get more heavily involved. Because, as you suggested, this is a crisis that will fester, not least because it's being nourished by national and global trends. We know, for example, that due north in San Francisco, you had a kind of coup that led to the ouster of a progressive prosecutor, Chesa Boudin, and his replacement by a lock 'em up and throw away the key prosecutor. They tried to do the same thing in LA County with George Gascon. And you might have noticed that Nuri Martinez also threw brickbats at George Gascon. He's of Cuban origin, and she said something like, he's with the blacks, quote unquote.
Right.
And
Right.
of course,
Right.
that's led to this new T-shirt, I'm with the blacks, that you might have seen all of the protesters, which, by the way, included a significant percentage of Mexican-American youth. That's very significant, and it's a foundation on which we can build.
Absolutely, absolutely. And very quickly, Dr. Horn, what do you make of? And I think I think I may know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna still pose the question to you so that our audience can understand. Why do you think President Biden decided to weigh in on a city council affair from a federal national level? I mean, this was Karine Jean-Pierre, who is his White House spokesperson. She said it from the national White House podium. The president is glad to see that one of the participants in that conversation has resigned, but they all should, calling the language recorded during the conversation unacceptable and appalling. Why do you think that she and the president put out a word about a city council affair?
Well, I think it was an easy score for the White House. That is to say that Mr. Biden knows more than most that he was heavily dependent upon the black vote, which catapulted him into the White House. There are many black voters who are disappointed with his performance thus far, justifiably and understandably. At the same time, if he attacks white racism, that will get him into hot water with a powerful voting bloc. And so it's easier and more convenient to attack racism coming from the Mexican-American community. So I hope that doesn't sound overly cynical, but that's my take.
And I'm glad that you shared that. Dr. Gerald Horn, who is the Moores Professor of History and African American Studies at the University of Houston. You can see him each and every Wednesday here on The Culture for the Horn Report. Dr. Horn, always a pleasure. Next week, Doc, I'm gonna just let you know right now, next week, I gotta talk to you about something that I'm seeing happening, which is there are a huge number of election deniers who are actually on the ballot across this country. When I say huge, folks, I'm talking about literally over 300. I'm going to share with y'all. I'm telling you, I got to get Dr. Horn's thoughts on this. Like what we're seeing in this midterm election, as you talk about all of the trends of racism and fascism, these election deniers are actually on the ballot in high-ranking positions in states across this country where they could continue to spew their lies, their falsehoods, and dictate the narrative to possibly win elections to serve the quote-unquote general public. Doc, we got to talk about that. We have to talk about it. Dr. Gerald Horn, thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. Good luck.
Folks. Yes, sir. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's continue the conversation about this LA City Council situation, because it was also, I want to get your take on what do you think of President Biden's decision on getting involved in a city council matter? Do you think, and I'm asking the question, do you think it was a wise decision for him to speak out on this situation? Now, I'm going to share with you what I think politically why he decided to say something. But I want to get your take on this as well. Plus, I got to share with you, as folks are looking and hearing the audio, you heard Dr. Horn say, Nuri Martinez went for everybody. She went for everybody. And so it was just reported, the LA Times and other outlets, she attacked Jews. She spoke about Armenians. Folks, y'all, if you've never been to Southern California, you understand the dynamics of power. Those are two powerful groups in Southern California. So we're seeing something here. We're seeing something. And again, the Latino community, our Latino brothers and sisters only make up about 22%. But that's 14% more than what we make in LA. So there is something that has to be done. But I want to get your take on this latest set of developments. Do you think President Biden's involvement in this whole situation was a wise decision for the president and the wise decision for the Democrats. Stay with us. Join us in the conversation. Post your comments on our Facebook page and, of course, on our YouTube page, and keep streaming us live on blackstarnetwork.com. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, that discussion is up next, so stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, and welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with you just briefly. We've been talking to a number of folks about this situation that's happening here in Los Angeles with the city council and with this leaked audio of former city council president Nuri Martinez and other members of the city council, as well as the labor union, former labor leader, Ron Herrera. Now, as a result of that, yesterday they held they had a city council president's meeting and a city council meeting, excuse me. And of course, in good old American political fashion, they tried to go through the meeting with business as usual. That didn't work out well at all. People were cussing. People were yelling. I mean, it was not a good decision. There was no real conversation. However, something that did come out of the meeting was that, one, they had to let the Los Angelinos know that they could not fire the other city council people because the city charter, there's no precedent for this. So there is no legal bounds, or there's no basis for them to fire them based on the city charter. But they have put forward a motion to suspend them. And I'm talking about Kevin De Leon, and I'm talking about Gil Cedillo, that they has put something before the council to suspend them. Now, as we just talked with Dr. Gerald Horn, that suspension is what they call more of a symbolic move. Let me just share with you very quickly what that suspension means. And I'm going to go back to, let me see if I can pull up this note here. If we look at, yeah, they suspended them. And as a result of that suspension, folks, they might be taking the time away from the council, but that does not rid the council of these type of individuals who's supposed to serve in the interest of the public. Now, all of this stuff is happening in LA. So then it reaches to the president of the United States, who has come out through his spokesperson, Corinne Jean-Pierre, who has made the statement saying that the president found this language to be appalling and unacceptable. And that he was glad to see that the other participants, that one out of the four decided to step down. Now we got 2 out of the 4 that have stepped down, Ron Herrera and Nuri Martinez, but he's calling for the other 2 to step down. The governor of the state, Governor Gavin Newsom, certainly called for them. The congressional representative called for them to step down. Mr. Padilla, he's called for them to step down. A lot of people, activists, faith leaders, a lot of folks are calling them to step down. They have not yet resigned from their position. Now, when Corinne Jean-Pierre said in her statements representing the president, and now, Keenan, let's go to quote number 2, when it was asked, how is it that the Democrats is handling this? And she said this: here's the difference between Democrats and Republicans. When a Democrat says something racist or anti-Semitic, we hold Democrats accountable. When a MAGA Republican says something racist and or anti-Semitic, they are embraced by cheering crowds and become celebrated and sought after. So all of this is creating the tides for something major to happen, which is a great moment. Now, I'm posing a question to each and every one of you that are tuning in. Do you think it was a wise decision for the president to speak on this? This is a city council. This is LA. This is one of many cities across the country. This is a local issue, right? Quote unquote. So do you think it was wise? So I want to get your take on this because this thing continues to unfold, new developments, and we're looking at the big picture of Black-Brown relations. We're looking at the big picture of Democrats have to do some real cleaning of the House, because these were all Democrats. These weren't Republicans. These were all Democrats. If we're looking at the big picture of this idea that with Black and Brown in positions of power, does this leave a stain on that? There are a lot of factors. We're talking about backdoor dealings. We're talking about racism. We're talking about some very fundamental issues that continues to poison where we are in this country. All right, let me go to what you have to say, folks, and post your comments on our YouTube or Facebook page, and we're going to do our best to try to get to as many of your comments as possible. But I appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of the conversation today. All right, let me start here. Let me start with my sister, Shalinda. Shalinda, thank you for checking in. You said they were all complicit in the conversation and they should all resign since they can only be suspended and not fired. Facts. Right. The fact that they have not decided to resign is troubling. That's troubling. You see public pressure, you see all these people, and you still stand fast. I mean, you still standing your ground on not resigning. Oh, see, now at this point, you need to go because you're just so obnoxious. You're so arrogant. You so felt like you're so entitled. And I'm talking to them about Mr. De Leon. So I'm with you there, Shalinda. Truth is power. You say, but you always noticed that when it's wrongdoing being done, they have to take a vote just to identify it as wrongdoing. But when it's us, they don't need to investigate. They take action. Yeah. You're talking about that double standard, truth is power. And I'm with you. I'm with you. I tweeted something else too the other day. I said, everybody else can be offended except for Black people. Oh, okay. When stuff happens to us, when we are the butt and the brunt, the butt of the joke, and we take the brunt of the impact. It's like y'all need to take it. That's essentially when we other people just say, well, why are they upset? They just need to take it. But let somebody say something about some other group of people, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Let someone else say something else about some other group of people. I don't care whether you're talking about Latinos, you're talking about Jews, Armenians, whoever. Let somebody else say something like, boom. They need to feel the fire of hell. But people can make fun of black folks all day, all night, with little to no consequences. What is what? You said separation is the only way. But here's my thing, though. Here's my thing on, and I think, and I'm with you, and I think that we still have to figure out, though, like we still have to be very active in ridding ourselves of this level of poisonous thinking, because as you heard Dr. Horn, this is something that is growing. This is a growing trend all across this country and around the world. You have these very, very outdated ideas that people are holding on to. These offensive ideas, these ideas that don't include everyone, that people are holding on to, that people are espousing each and every day. And these are people who hold powerful positions. They hold powerful positions. They determine policy that affects each and every one of us. So we got to deal with this. Like, if nothing else, I don't want to bring my children up in a system that thinks that they're accessories and monkeys. I know you don't either. So we need to deal with this. Like, we can't run away from this, folks. We have to deal with this. And I'm all for separation. I like the idea of separation. I think that if you're going to talk about separation, there got to be a lot of other conversations about what does that look like and all of those things. But while we're here together, we got to deal with this. Brother King Lee, my guy, you said, brother, Dr. Professor, he is in he is in Europe. The right wing is growing more and more. The Germany state of, and I don't know, make sure I'm pronouncing it, Niedersachsen, had elections last weekend. The right wing made gains in that state. You're talking about what Dr. Horn is saying about the growing level of fascism and racism that we're seeing in public office. This is why we need to fight. We can fight at the ballot box, and we can fight by being organized. We can fight by uniting with each other. Remember, we had a conversation earlier this week talking about how so many black folks ideologically we're not on the same page, according to the latest research from I think it was Pew. And if we're not on the same page about some of the political things, which are blatant things, right? Like these are very blatant issues that we're seeing happening in the political space. And if we're not on the same page on how to address them, then we can't talk about making any gains. We can't talk about eradicating. We can't even talk about separation, because guess what? A lot of our people are not in that space. We're not all there. So we have to address what is happening right now. King, thank you so much, bro. Good to hear from you. DeAndre C, you said salute. Can they be? I'm sure there has to be a way that possible for us, for those elected officials to be elected out of office the same as they were elected into office. There has to be a safeguard. The only way they can do that is a recall. According to the city's charter, they have to go through a recall election. And I think Cedillo, he might be the only person that is not able to do a recall because he's scheduled, like his term ends in December. So there's not enough time. But others like De Leon, he can be recalled if they decide to move in that fashion. Karen Connie, Karen, you are a Black Angelino, so you know the situation all too well. You said Nuri has a reputation known to many here in LA and the city of San Fernando out there in the valley. Yep. And I'm learning that. You know what I'm saying? As I'm coming and learning and seeing how things play out and figuring out who the power brokers are and all of those things, it's like, wow. The crazy part about that, Karen, is how did people let her stay in power for so long? Because I'm hearing she's been like a stalwart of power in the city of Los Angeles for years. Like, how did that happen? Like, this is never, like, she's never expressed these type of sentiments before. So that's my big question. Taylor, you checked in. Karen, it's good to hear from you. Thank you, sis, and let me know. Taylor, you said Arizona has a large Hispanic Latino community, and looks who is winning in the upcoming polls. Sheriff Sparky, you said Nuri's fascist comments support imposing Spanish and not indigenous districts. Mark's district is the highest concentration of indigenous people who are oppressed by Spanish speakers. And see, this, Dr. Horn talk about the comments made by the candidate running for LA County Sheriff, putting a big bullseye on every black man's head. This situation puts every bullseye on any Latino man or woman's head who don't deserve it, right? Because now black people, we gonna look at each other, we looking at the Latino brother and sister and like, y'all racist too. Y'all racist too. So this is not good. This is not good for anybody. That's why I asked the question at Dr. Horn in the last segment. What about the next generation of Latino men and women? These young men, these young women who are coming up in this time period. Because they got to get involved, because that's the only way you're going to break this cycle of hate. You got to educate the young. You got to make sure that they are racially literate. You got to make sure that they understand what the stakes are and how important it is for them to be to have the right view of other people in their city. Chris Bake, you checked in and said, look, I think as president of these United States, it's his duty to speak on cultural and political actions, especially if they are negative. After all, everything comes back to him. You're absolutely right, Chris. Here's my take on this. I think the president weighed in on this conversation, on this situation, because one, it's a huge slap in the face for what the Democrats, quote unquote, stand for, right? Democrats is not supposed to be the party of hate. The Democrats is supposed to be the big tent party that embraces all. The Democrats is looking to be that party that embraces the Latino, the black, the white, bring us all in a space of unity. So I think that's one. But two, on a political side, we have Congresswoman Karen Bass, who's running for office here, right? So, LA is such a major component. The state of California is a major component. You got Karen Bass running for LA, a black woman. You got Governor Gavin Newsom, who has thrown out there that he would run for president, right? And he's probably one of the few names that may have an actual shot of getting the presidency, right? So California has always been progressive, is always kind of leading the way on a number of issues. So, and big money people live out in California. Can't forget that part. There's a lot of big money people that live out here. The donors to give to the Democratic Party live out here. So it's I think, and the final point about that is that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, I think she's up for re-election. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I want to check the documents around this, but I think she's up for re-election. She's supposed to have some fundraisers over these next couple of weeks, right? That President Biden is going to be, stopping by and checking out. So politically, it's in his best interest. It's in his best interest. Now, folks, if you just noticed on our YouTube chat, there's a poll that we posted. Was it wise for President Biden to weigh in on the LA City Council scandal? If you haven't, many of you have already said it. 80% of you said yes, it is wise. 20% of you said no, it is not wise. But there are so many political connections that President Biden sees, that there's a political opportunities that may be spoiled as a result of this. So he had to weigh in. You got Gavin Newsom, somebody that's possibly replace you. You got Speaker Nancy Pelosi trying to get for re-election. You want to keep her voice there. You got Karen Bass, who you want to keep a black woman in that space, right? I'm looking up something else, folks. Check this out. I'm looking up something else as we have this conversation. I want to know what is, and if y'all can tell me, what is the budget? What's the budget? The LA budget of LA. What's the budget? Because this is big money here. Last year, LA Mayor Eric Garcetti approved the city budget. Y'all ready for this? Last year, he approved the city budget, which stood at a whopping $11.2 billion. $11.2 billion, folks. That's not small money. That's not small money by any stretch of the imagination. So if you think about, and many of you might, some of you, I'm not gonna say many, some of you might be thinking to yourself, well, why would Karen Bass, who was in Congress, why would she step away from her federal position to a local position? Because she got more power as the mayor of LA with an $11 billion budget than she does as a congressperson of a district. Y'all see this? Y'all see this? She got more power. LA is one of the most populous states in the cities in the country. It's the home of Hollywood and other industries, tech. You got, like I said, donors. You got a lot of things here in the city. According to the 2020 census, there are about 3.9 million people in the city of LA, 10 million people in the county of LA. And, we traveling all throughout. We crossing lines every day, B. You know what I mean? So you're talking about 14 million people. Man, that's power. That's power. Not diminishing the role of a congressperson. I'm just letting you know what I think might be the thought pattern of this situation. So you got a vested interest in the city of Los Angeles, culturally, financially, politically, and you got a vested interest in the state of California, because this might be the home of your next president in Gavin Newsom. Why wouldn't the president speak on it? He's looking at his interest. So we will see. We will have to see how this thing unfolds. I'm keeping my eyes out on it. Of course, I'm going to keep you posted on the situation. But this could be a game changer. I'm going to Dr. Horn's point as we wrap up. If Los Angeles, which this story has made national and international news because of the elements of power and racism and race, and in terms of being Latino, racist tropes being tossed around, and all of those things. If the city of Los Angeles is able to find a way to move forward from this in a productive way where the relationship between Black and brown communities are strengthened as a result of this, then can you imagine how that will serve as a model for other cities who may be facing the same thing in their city councils or even in their state legislatures? If LA is able to get through this, right? Again, not with a press release, not with an apology statement, but to get through this where the people, the residents of the city of Los Angeles, both Black and brown, the Armenians, the Oaxacan community, and others who have a vested interest, and we all got a vested interest. If we're able to get through this, right, with having the right conversations based upon truth, based upon history, based upon interests of all the communities and stakeholders, if we're able to get through this in the most productive way, that, again, LA will be seen as a model city in helping a city that has been rife with racism. We ain't forgot about Rodney King. We ain't forgot about a whole bunch of other racist incidents that have happened. If the city can deal with this and really start to uproot this from city government and other industries, it can serve as a model. it can be a beacon of hope that other cities that are smaller can use to get rid of that type of thinking in government. If the city does it right, if the people, and it comes down to the people, it always comes down. City Hall can put out a lot of legislatures, policies, but it comes down to the people saying enough is enough. And if at yesterday's council meeting, there was the sentiment that something needs to change, that corruption needs to be uprooted, that racism needs to be eradicated. But guess what? That can't happen from City Hall. That has to happen from the households and the communities, and most importantly, from the hearts and the minds of the people. All right, folks, look, I got to take a quick pause. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Look, when we come forward, let's talk about fashion. We're going to take fashion to the next level. We're going to be checking in with Patrick Cupid to discuss that. And later on, I'm going to talk to the Sisters of A Day Without Us. Remember, I told you about how they had their day speaking up for women's reproductive rights. Well, we're going to talk to them about what's happening, what's going to be the next step of the movement. So stay with us. A lot coming at you in the next hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Thank you so much for tuning in for the second hour. Folks, had a dynamic conversation talking about with our Horn Report that we air every Wednesday, as well as our discussion around what's happening here in the city of Los Angeles and the city council scandal that continues to rock the city and political spaces all across this country. So, folks, if you didn't get a chance to listen to what we had to say in the first hour, make sure y'all check us out on the replay. And while you're checking us out, make sure you share the replay with all your family and friends. Just let people know that you're tuned into The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Now, we can't have no conversation without you. So that's why it's important that we get your support financially, because we want to make sure that we're having these conversations in an unadulterated way. So go to blackstarnetwork.com, support the network, support the growth, support the movement that we have here with Black media. You can definitely check us out and learn all that you can and more at blackstarnetwork.com. Share the information. And if you want to connect with me, you can certainly connect with me on my social media at The Real Farajii on Instagram, Farajii on Twitter, and Farajii Muhammad on Facebook. All right, folks, we wanted to switch gears in the discussion. Now we're talking from politics to talking about more cultural things, which is the I would say one of the big cultural things that I often see in our community is our presentation. Fashion is a huge part of our culture because it has become the moniker on how we see the world and how we want the world to see us. So today we are talking to our very special guest, Mr. Patrick Cupid, who is a fashion designer and entrepreneur. He was raised and now based in New York City. He credits his design vocabulary to his hometown for its rich diversity. And in response to the new realities of modern living, he combines luxury and leisure, allowing for a seamless transition between professional and social events without sacrificing independent style. So I want to welcome to the airways of the Black Star Network and the culture, Mr. Patrick Cupid. Brother Patrick, how are you this afternoon?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about this because I'm talking about taking fashion to the next level. Why is it that we need to have a conversation about fashion and, more importantly, fashion that reflects our independent style? I've just read just a little bit about the work that you're doing, and it's not just about clothes. It's not just about putting a few pieces of fabric together. This is something much deeper for the work that you do, Patrick.
It is. I mean, I treat the Patrick Cupid brand more like a conversation, and a continued dialogue about individualism and about like self-identity. I think the conversation is important because more and more as we move into this digital world, right? Like now we're talking metaverse, we're all on social media, everything is about the influencer. And so we're sort of living in this world where what is outside, what is happening, beyond ourselves is sort of more important. And we tend to lose our voices. We tend to lose ourselves, in that by following the influencers. I had a conversation earlier today about this idea of cool, like remember when things were cool? Well, cool had this sort of connotation of individualism. People, when they thought about doing something cool, it was because they liked it. It's because it appealed to them. It was a reflection or an expression of either who they were, of their interests, of how they felt, in the moment or whatever was going on. People used to say, I remember growing up, and hearing, when I was in high school and other places, oh, I want to be different, or I want to be individual, or I just, I want to be me. And now we're moving into this world where it's just like, oh, it's all trend, right? We're doing it because the influencers said so. We're doing it because the Kardashians are doing it, or we're doing it because, Kanye's doing it, or whoever else is, has our attention for the moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how do we define cool at this point?
I think it's getting back to listening to yourself, like having your own voice, right? What is your personal style, or even if you do something, you buy mainstream fashion and you go out, what is your spin on it? It's the way you wear the blazer. It's the way you wear the jacket. It's the way you wear the sneaker. It's the way you, maybe do your hair, slightly different than something else. It's that one special thing. I mean, the term like, cool or the cool kids were always the people that were sort of daring, right? They were sort of the outsider. They didn't roll and click. They were sort of always doing their own thing. But you noticed, you noticed and you were like, oh, wow, and again, the response was, wow, that's really cool. Or, oh, that's so different, or that's so unique. And it would inspire people either to do their own thing or to put their own spin on it. Some people became followers and just tried to mimic or pick up on it in some way. But there was still this vast idea of, how do I do it my way? Or even if I'm inspired, inspiration is not copying, right? Inspiration is, okay, well, that gave me an idea and this is how I'm going to expand on it, right? This is how I'm going to put it in my own words, or this is how I'm going to illustrate that and show it, my version of that to the world, as opposed to, well, I'm going to do exactly what that person's doing, and what I feel or have to say is of no consequence.
So, Patrick, that brings me to something that I I feel like that we're all challenged by, because we are in a social media driven world, right? Social media continues to be this thing. And even the idea of being a quote unquote an influencer, it's always like one of these like hate to love terms. You know what I mean? Because so many times, like when we're expecting people to know what their personal style is, their personal style is still a reflection of someone else's view of what style is, of what cool is, right? And so, you know, in a space where there are so many people that are coming up, like, for example, I see a lot of Black men, you know, then this is the power of trends. It's like when you see a trend happening, you know, a Black man wears hair a certain way. We all got beards now. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I remember, and you remember, I'm sure you remember this. I remember when Lil Wayne became hot as an artist, like he was always on the scene, but then at a certain point, everybody had locks. Everybody had tats on their face, right? And that's why I think it's funny on his God Did verse. He's like, you know, I was tat on my face, locks, and I was the apex of the I am the culture. Like, you know, Jay-Z. When Jay-Z said, you know, we wearing button-ups now and you know what I mean? And now we wearing jeans. That's like the whole party scene was like, oh, we off of jerseys? Oh, okay, now. Let's throw some button-ups. Now we have the button-ups in that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like when you're operating in a space where you have people who have these platforms, they are able to dictate what the cool is, to dictate the culture. How do you still get people to take a minute to say, stop? What is your expression? Not what is your version of someone else's expression, but what is your expression? What do you feel like wearing? What defines, or how do you want to be presented to the world? How do you do that?
I think it's through conversations like this, right? And it's by giving people more options, you know, of what to wear. I mean, now in the last couple of years, we're seeing a focus on Black designers and Black talent in the industry.
Right.
We have always been the inspiration for European brands and other companies. I mean, Karl Lagerfeld was famous for coming into Harlem and to the Bronx and the streets of New York and picking up the street style that was made popular by, you know, or in Black communities. And then taking that back to Fendi and Chanel and then selling it right back to us. So the conversations have to happen. I think people need, you know, it's, especially like as a Black male, you know, we have socially been locked out for such a long time and told that we don't have a voice. You know, how we feel doesn't matter. You know, we weren't allowed to have feelings. Like first, you know, you have to be a man and boys don't cry and you don't have feelings and you just. But then also when it came down to financial matters or in the corporate world, in the corporate sector, you know, we weren't getting jobs. You know, we weren't being placed. We weren't being hired. We were not the CEOs and the CFOs. We were not in the boardrooms. We were not in, you know, wasn't until the 90s we really got even into the mailroom, you know? So it's a deeper conversation about your self-expression or about being able to say, you know, to share what your knowledge, to share your wealth that comes from inside. And I think, you know, fashion is just one of those ways. So I think having the conversations and moving the needle forward by giving space to people as a whole, you know, men, women, you know, I design women's clothing, but men as well, and especially Black men, to express themselves, you know, and to not shame them for it. You know, like, a couple of years ago, if a guy was wearing pink, you know, guys would make fun of him. Oh, you know, that's this, or, you know, and the comments that would come around, you know, things that have to stop. Like, it has to be okay for a person to be themselves. Like, I admire Lil Nas X for coming out and, like, you know, in his bold, sort of very in-your-face way of, I don't care what you think about me. I'm going to express myself and I'm going to be exactly who I am, whether you love him or hate him. We need that. We need that because we need for people to understand and see, you know, because what we feel and what we think is relevant. You know, we're moving into spheres where, you know, you have, Virgil, you know, God rest his soul, was, at Louis Vuitton and doing many, many things, like that is a nuance. Like that's really, really important to have that,
And there's only, I think I read a figure, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, that I was like, we only represent like 1% of folks in these major fashion houses. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to quote the number, but yeah, I mean, we're not, and the joke is in the higher positions, the biggest names in fashion for Black designers globally, were both in France. Wow. And then we have some here in the United States, but that are looking at, doing like hip hop and streetwear. Even I myself have been, sort of categorized or pigeonholed into, when I say design, and people go, oh, it might be some really cool streetwear. Is it like hip hop? And I'm like, no, I do women's ready-to-wear.
So what you design, FUBU?
Right, exactly, right? It's like, oh, you're like, no, God, no. There has to be more room for us than that, and now we're seeing where they are listening. The world is paying attention. They're seeing that we are more than just that, that we have more ideas. There are more influences. There are more inspired concepts that are coming out of the community and different ways to do it. I mean, the reality is we change the way the world dresses more than once. At hip hop and street style from the late 80s with the baggy jeans and the oversized clothes and, the windbreakers and the sweatpants and then wearing sneakers, till now people are wearing sneakers on the red carpet. They're doing it all over the world. They're doing it in China. They're doing it in Japan. They're doing it in India. People want to get in on, on sneakers. People want to get in on urban fashion. Well, that was us.
Right.
If we could do that and we could affect the world that way, what else can we say? What else can we do that can move the needle forward? What else? But unless we express ourselves in that way, unless we're allowed to say that, unless we're allowed to show what we can do, and not even toward the outside world, but even for ourselves, unless we feel confident in how we look and how we dress, then if it doesn't matter to us, then why would it matter to anyone else?
I want to get your take on something. This has been this thing that I'm about to share or get your view on has been something that I see a lot of Black men talk about, which is, you're seeing styles that a lot of there seems to be a quote unquote feminization of Black male styles when it comes to clothes, right? That Black men are experimenting, and some people would even go to say, oh, you're going too far when you're wearing certain things, and that we see from some, celebrities to high profile figures. And I wanted to get your take on that. How should we see when we see Black men wearing certain things? And I remember when skinny jeans came out, man, brother, I'm sure, you know what I mean? Like brothers were like, I mean, from the baggy jean world and the long tees to skinny jeans, it's like, what's going on here? What's really happening? And some people will even go as far as to say, Patrick, that there's a conspiracy to feminize Black males and the dress code of Black males. As a man that designed clothes, what do you make of this conversation, and how should we see the various styles that men, particularly Black men, are experimenting right now, from the colors to the fabrics to the styles themselves?
I say, throw this conspiracy in the trash, because when white men do it, when Asian men do it, when Latino men do it, we celebrate it. We applaud. We're like, oh, that's hot, that's fly. Oh, that's so cool. Or that's so futuristic, that's so contemporary, or that's so artsy. No one goes around calling them effeminate. A white man comes in and it's a pair of tight, skinny jeans. No one's calling him effeminate. No one's questioning him. It's okay for him to do it. It's masculine for him to do it. He's still a man in that look. When they wear, a kilt is a cultural staple from Scotland, right? No one's calling them effeminate. No one's saying, oh, we're putting men in skirts. Tom Brown is one of the biggest designers now, and he's doing, skirts for men in suits. It's clothes. it's fabric. It's a personal self-expression. If you like pants, wear pants. If you like a skirt, wear a skirt. Culturally, we have been reduced as Black men to sexual animals and really nothing more. And that was a way to dehumanize us by confusing us about our sexuality and about our identity and of what masculinity is and masculinity isn't. You're masculine if you're a thug, or if you're gang banging, or if you're hardcore and your pants are too big and they're sagging off. If you come into the hood and you're well dressed and your pants are on your waist and you got a belt, you're a sissy, you're all kinds of things. You're anything but a man. And that's garbage. That doesn't happen in other cultures. That doesn't happen amongst other nationalities, and this is also something that's very pervasive here in the United States. You go into the Caribbean, you go to Jamaica, they've been wearing yellow and green and pink and purple forever. Fishnet, or netted tops and tank tops. You would see the Jamaican guys running around with their chest and stuff out. The jeans are extremely tight and everything else, because they're not taught to be ashamed of their bodies. They're not taught to be ashamed of who they are. They're still masculine. They're still men. There's no question in their mind about it. Italian men are the same. They wear beautiful clothes, and and the way that they dress themselves, and the clothes are more fitted and like tailored to their bodies, where they're showing their bodies off, and no one's saying anything about them or questioning their masculinity in any way. So I think before we start accusing others of sort of feminizing Black men, I think we have to start to ask the question as to why that's an issue. Why are we even having that discussion in the first place? Why is Black masculinity even being questioned from Jump Street? What is it about that? And it's another way of also silencing us. Again, the way that we dress is an expression of it's a self-expression. So if you take away our self-expression, if you make us insecure about the way that we look, and then we're going to be insecure about how we feel, we're going to be less likely to speak up. We're not going to be comfortable when we enter into the room, because we're going to be trying to fit into a mold that we don't fit into, that doesn't belong to us. And that's never going to feel good. So we're always going to be on this edge of never feeling good enough, never feeling masculine enough, never feeling man enough, never feeling Black enough, never feeling wealthy enough, never feeling good enough at the end of the day. And I think when we start to say those things, no, I think we need to take that away. And I think we need to start celebrating each other in our differences and what we bring to the table. You can't build new things if we're constantly stuck on the same thing all the time. We won't move forward. We won't change if we're doing the same thing. If we've been doing the same thing for the last 100 years, it's not going to work.
And I think it's an indicator of the changing of how we define manhood today, right? I mean, I think there is just a growing consciousness that's happening in this country and around the world. From terms to personal expression through our clothes and fashion, where people are trying to transition out of old way of doing things and trying to figure out, okay, what is going to be the new norm on how we see each other. I mean, you spoke about the whole, men don't cry type of thing. Like, there's a lot of pushback around, toxic masculinity, and more importantly, what does being masculine look like, right? And so I think that's an ongoing conversation, but I think that is even more an ongoing personal expression, right? Because nobody grants you masculinity or femininity,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, you're born a certain way, but how you express yourself, that's your choice.
It is your choice. It's going to have to do a lot with who you are internally. It's going to have to do a lot with how you're raised, and your interests and the things that you like and what they, and what that might be. There's going to be a lot of factors playing into that. But what we have to stop doing is silencing each other and stop silencing our children. Stop silencing, our voices. Like, even when I was growing up, I had to hide when I would sketch, because I was sketching clothing, I was sewing up for dolls and doing all these different things. And I had to hide that, because there was a fear of getting in trouble, or I'm doing something wrong, or boys don't sew, so boys don't do that. Well, if I didn't continue that, I wouldn't be here having this conversation right now, If Virgil didn't take an interest, if these other Black men didn't take an interest in clothes and in fashion, we wouldn't even be 1%. There would be no hip hop. There'd be no street style. So that has to stop. Like these ideas that we put on our kids. Try finding out who they are first and celebrate them in that. Help them to be secure in who they are. The way that other children are celebrated for who they are and get to do what they want to do. Their parents will do everything in their power to help them become the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
That they can be, as opposed to doing everything in their power to shut down who you are, to try to make you fit into this mold because they're afraid of how the world is going to view you. The world is going to be scared of us no matter what we do because of the color of our skin. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But again, unless we're able to express ourselves and let them see who we really are, that also isn't going to change.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me go take a couple of comments from our online culture crew, Patrick, because folks are checking in, and this conversation is driving many people to have the discussion online about everything from masculinity to personal expression to what should we expect from Black designers like yourself. Let me just tell you, my wife is a huge, huge lover of Black designers, so I'm about to just show her your website. Keena, let's pull up the website so people can see what Patrick has to offer, because Patrick is doing it real big, folks. PatrickCupid.com. That's the website to check out what our brother is doing. And it's a beautiful thing. It's absolutely a beautiful thing, man. And when you go to the site, just take a look at some of the designs that this brother has put together for Black women, representing the beauty, the power, the boldness, the creative expression of women and Black women. Look at some of the fabrics. I'm learning. I'm learning, brother. I'm learning about fashion. I'm learning a little bit about fabrics and textiles. I'm learning about, what I'm saying, like what fits and what doesn't fit, what works and what doesn't work. So, when I went to the website, I was just blown away. Like, man, this is some really beautiful things that you put on there. This is really an art. This is an art. Yes, there's a business, but this is an art. To learn how to do fashion, and take a look at this, to learn how to design and to learn how to create. This is an art. And for a man to do it for the women, I've seen women do it for men. That is a very, very impressive skill, Patrick. Very impressive. And this is PatrickCupid.com. And this is where y'all can check out all of his latest pieces, and you can order pieces directly to you for this. Now, let me just share with you a couple of what folks are saying about this whole conversation. And I really liked what Taylor, you said people saw people like Prince wore pink and ruffles. MJ, skinny jeans.
They loved him for it.
And Rodman, whatever he wore. But didn't come out trying to copy them. They inspired individualism. Make it work for you. I love that. I remember, look, we laugh and I know a lot of dudes, Prince will whip your ass, man. You know what I'm saying? Hey, look, Patrick, I remember seeing this documentary on El DeBarge.
Yeah.
And his brothers, right? Of course, everybody know El DeBarge, the famous singing group and everything. And, one of the guys in the documentary said, yeah, we were wearing these type of clothes, and a lot of people thought we were soft. Mm-hmm. He said, nah, bro, don't get it twisted. We wear the glittery clothes, we wear the soft fabrics. But if you cross us, he said, and people would come up, and this was like one of the brothers of Elder Bosch. He said people would approach my brother and challenge him about his masculinity, challenge him about things. And he said we had to take a couple of people to the back and had to whip their ass. And I was like, whoa, what? Elder Bosch? Chico and Chico and the gang?
Yeah, Chico.
even in the rhythm of the night, and then you whipping ass. Look back. Like, yo. So I mean, it just. I mean, fashion brings all types of people. Fashion is a big form. As we close out on this conversation, Patrick, as we look at where fashion is going, there's you. I know of the brother Brandon Blackwood. My wife loves some of the pieces that he puts out, the purses and everything. So name them, brother. Who are the people? Who are the Black designers that we need to support moving forward?
There's Carlton Jones comes to mind. Nicole Benenfield, who's a very good friend. Aisling Camp, she's doing some wonderful things in knitwear. Ginny, Essential Hats, like are phenomenal. So if you're out for hats and you're looking for, definitely check out Essential. They're all on Instagram. If you can't find them, you can follow me on Instagram at Patrick Cupid. And you can go through my list and you'll see them, posted or shared or anything, and you can find them, and just stay on top of it. I mean, there are so many Black designers, that are not mainstream, that are delivering beautiful quality, really, really great and innovative design. It's not always, at very different price points. So there's really something at every price point. People say, oh, well, some things are too expensive or some things are not enough. No, we're out here and there are many, many, to choose from, and you can find something, and to be supportive and something that reflects you. I mean, we grow together. So, yeah. Check us out.
So Patrick, as we wrap up really quickly, what's the key to your success? I mean, you are producing women's clothes. You are in these spaces. You are a Black man that's doing something that only a few Black men have the ability to do. What's the key to your success, brother?
Focus and dedication. Like those are the two things. And that's anything you want to do. For me, really, it doesn't really matter what it is. Like once you decide what you want,
you
have to focus on it and you have to get it. I mean, don't think that there aren't going to be challenges. Don't think that I don't see challenges. I do. I know who I am and I know where I come from, and I know what those challenges bring. But I still have to look beyond that because I have a goal and I have a place that I want to get to. And every step, that I make forward gets me closer to it. And so as long as I stay on that path, when there's hard days, you make mistakes, things happen. There are going to be challenges, and that comes with the territory. If those are good problems to have. If there's an issue with a client, I celebrate that because I have a client to have an issue with, right? So if I didn't have a different problem. So it's where your mind is at, and where your focus lies is really what's going to get you there. That's the key to success. Focus.
Hey, brother, look, Patrick, first and foremost, I thank you for your time. And more importantly, I thank you for being who you are, and breaking the barriers. I know for our great brother, Virgil Abloh, he set the mark, but brothers like you and others who are kind of leading the charge to make sure that we're represented in the high fashion world. And I didn't get a chance to pick your brain about Kanye and his ongoing gripe with the fashion world.
Oh yeah, like let me not make people mad right now because I'm yeah.
I'm just saying, like Kanye.
How much time do we have left in this?
Look, and I ain't talking about all the other stuff. I'm just saying his ongoing beef with the fashion world.
Yeah.
In 30 seconds, what do you make of that? He's always claiming that he don't have no space. Nobody's letting at the table. But Kanye, you are a billionaire. So I'm just supposedly you're supposed to be a billionaire. Your shoes are moving. You're making clothes, and it's like you're getting sponsored by Adidas, Gap, and the other major brands, but you're saying that you're not being supported. You just had a fashion show in Paris, not talking about the political side. I mean, what do you make of that? Is he good for the fashion world, for Black fashion designers like you?
I think.
That's all right. Okay, thank you so much, Patrick. I appreciate you. That pause said everything. You were like,
no. What I'm gonna say is this. What I'm gonna say is that any of us, good, bad, or indifferent, that is there, that's in the space. What you do in the space when you get in, when the door opens and you have a seat at the table, what you do with that does matter. So be wise in your words, be wise in your choices and in your decisions, because you can't have the door slammed behind you, and I don't think Kanye has. I think his presence alone and the fact that he is a disruptor in the industry, makes room for all of us, right? Because now you kind of have to pay attention. He got as far as he did. He's earned it. He's done the work. He's got himself there, and I have nothing but respect for him on that level. And I think it shows that we can do that. It says that to us. It says to other Black men and other Black people as a whole that, yeah, we can get there. We can get those endorsements. We can get to do the major shows in Paris and in other places. We can get, Vogue to pay attention and, these editors and things to come out and see us, if we do the work and if we really focus and strive and get there. So I think regardless of whether you love or hate or you're indifferent to Kanye, I think his presence has to be noted and it has to be respected, because it does move the needle forward for us. It does, regardless of how we feel. It does.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah,
that's big. My man King Lee said, I agree with you, brother Patrick Cupid, regarding Ye. Thanks for pointing that out. That's huge. Like, all of this stuff is leading to something good.
Yeah, it's factual. I mean, there are conversations around, that have to be had, and regardless of what side he stands on it, the conversations are being had, right? Like, we're having the conversations now. We're talking about it. We're being challenged in that way, and if not him, then who, right? Like, somebody has to go in and shake things up in order for the rest of us to come out and say, to be able to have an opinion about fashion style. Yeah. So
are we talking about Kanye West, or are you talking about my big brother Roland Martin? Because that's what he's doing on the Black media side too. He's disrupting.
Yeah.
And you know what? You need that. I'm not making. I'm being honest. You need that, and plus, everyone in our everyone knows they got that one family member that gets shit kicked off. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, well, who? Somebody you might have came home from school and be like, somebody bothered me at school, and then some family like, well, okay, just handle this way. You got that one family member and be like, whose ass you about to kick today? Right. We going to their house right now. Oh, that's so-and-so around the corner. Get the Vaseline. Like, they just, and we need them people, man. We need them. We need them. We need disruptors. We need disruptors. All right, Patrick, I took enough of your time, brother. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for doing the great work, brother. Thank you. Folks, the website is patrickcupid.com. You can check out all his latest fashions, all of the details about the great work that he's doing. He's designing beautiful, beautiful fashions. Make sure y'all follow him on all social media platforms. And let's continue to have the conversations about our self-expression, our fashion that's good for the culture. Patrick Cupid, thank you, brother, for being so good for the culture. I truly appreciate you, brother.
No problem. Thank you. All right.
Absolutely. See you. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, look, I'm going to talk to some of the ladies that is doing the great work of making sure that we don't forget about the importance of women reproductive rights. We talked a little bit about the Day Without Us campaign. And so in a few moments, we're going to talk to the campaign director, Ms. Tiffany Flowers, to bring us up to date on what's the next step for this movement. Stay with us. That's coming up right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
It's an angry angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, for our final conversation today, I wanted us to get an update on that very, very powerful demonstration of A Day Without Us. This is the demonstration where women from all across the country have decided to say enough is enough. And this was an organized Black woman-led reproductive effort where reproductive justice advocates and organizers who have developed an inclusive table with supporting organizations. And basically, the goal of this day that we saw earlier this month is to provide educational and information for how people can collectively take action during this critical point in history when we're looking at the reversal of Roe v. Wade and the Hyde Amendment and other policies that diminishes the right of a woman to have agency over her body and to make the best decisions that are for her interests. So we wanted to talk to the campaign director of The Day Without Us, Miss Tiffany Flowers, who's joining us right now. Tiffany, thank you for checking in and being with us this afternoon. How are you?
I'm really honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I've been trying to hunt y'all down.
We're busy out here.
Y'all busy. Y'all some busy Black women, man. Y'all too busy. What y'all doing? Let me stop playing. You like we out here saving lives, Farajii. We saving lives.
Farajii, we doing what you're doing. We out here working for the culture. We're out here trying to make sure our people don't get left behind and we get all the information that we need. So you know that's the 24/7 job.
Oh, and I know it all too well, Tiffany, all too well. All right, sis, so let's talk about this. A Day Without Us. We had, when I heard about this day, I was so excited because I felt like it was there's always this ongoing kind of conversation, but I love when Black women are able to take their words, put it into action, and make it into something more tangible. This day that happened, and I mean, it didn't happen exactly like, oh, Roe v. Wade was reversed, boom, we're going to do a day without us. There was some planning that was done that you sisters did. There was some networking that you sisters did, and there was some intentionality behind the work that you sisters did to make this day happen. First and foremost, talk to us about what happened on that day and what were some of the things that came out that we need to be aware of.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I just want to highlight, because I always try to highlight why we picked that day. Friday,
right.
September 30th was the 46th anniversary of the Hyde Amendment. And for our folks and friends and family who don't know, the Hyde Amendment allows for people who can give birth, women and people that birth, if you are on government assistance for your health care. And a doctor is to say to you, if you carry on this pregnancy, it puts your life in danger. You could die. You could become very ill. If you do not have the monetary means to solve that problem yourself, you could die. And the government has left that statute in place for 46 years. There have been innumerable deaths and innumerable levels of harm caused to people by leaving this amendment in place, and it actually needs to end. And so we picked that day because we wanted to highlight what that actually means, how much harm it perpetuates. And also Friday the 30th was a few days before the Supreme Court came back. So what came out of that day was a true linking of movements, right? We had people there like Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright from Black Voters Matters, and Judith Dianis Brown from Advancement Project. But then we also had young people there from March for Our Lives and the Grad Student Action Network. And then we had people like Black Men Build in the house and Tanya Fields over at the Black Feminist Project talking about the ways in which reproductive justice is an issue that affects us all, right? And so if you're not talking about bodily autonomy and freedom, but you're organizing around labor rights, or you're deep in the Black organizing struggle, but you're not thinking about how that ties into climate, then we're not doing our work. And so the point of that day was to tie everything together and say, hey, folks, this Roe decision wasn't just about abortion rights and women. It's actually an attack on all of our rights and all of our bodily freedoms.
But this is being kind of redefined specifically for Black women. And the reason I'm kind of making this distinction is because when we have these conversations, it's from a lens of looking at through the lens of looking at the issue, through the feminist movement that have been often led by white women. So talk to us about why that's important for us to note here, that this is Black women coming together to talk about reproductive justice instead of saying, okay, this is about, we're bringing all women, quote unquote, to the table. Why is that important?
It's important because we have to name that Black women it's actually 12. There are 12 Black women. The mothers of reproductive justice actually coined this phrase. And so when we say reproductive justice, we're actually following in the footsteps of our elders and our leaders who said many years ago, this is not a new phrase for them. They came up with this phrase in the 90s, over 30 years ago. And it was in response to the idea that reproductive rights is not enough. And so reproductive justice and this idea that our elders have taught us is that we not only have a right to decide if we want a baby, but we have a right to decide if we don't want to have a baby. And no matter what that choice is, it also means that we have a reasonable right to breathe clean air. It means that we have a reasonable right to expect a good life, not based on the zip code that you were born in, not based on the socioeconomic class that you were born in. It means that children, if we decide to bear them, have a right to go to a good and clean and fair and equitable and well-supplied school. It means that we have a right to we have a reasonable expectation to live a fully dignified, well-supported, and free life. And so again, Black women have taught us through their feminist lens and their feminist practice that when we talk about this, we are not simply talking about giving birth or not giving birth. We're talking about the quality of our life, not just as women, but for all of us.
Right. And that's the big thing, I think, Tiffany, that we have to keep in mind, that this situation here is different for Black women. I mean, we can look at the studies and we can see the research when it comes to reproductive health. And I'm talking about when women go into the doctor's office, they're being told much different information than Black women. They're being told much different information versus white women when it comes to reproductive health, right? And we also know that Black women are often not taken seriously when they're talking about what is going on with their bodies. After, either because of childbirth, it might be an unfortunate, horrific tragedy, say because of any type of sexual violation, anything like that women aren't taken seriously. So can you speak on that as well? Like, how do you strengthen the Black woman's voice? Because it's not just about policy, it's also about being heard.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a viral story that's happened right now to one of our young sisters in Philadelphia. She's pregnant. She went to the doctor because she was experiencing pain. She tried to give an in-depth explanation of exactly what she was feeling, why she was feeling it. I believe in the story, she said she's 7 going on 8 months pregnant, and she was ridiculed. She was mistreated. She was actually manhandled by a nurse. She became afraid. And so she taped the interaction, and the woman asked her, what did you expect when you became pregnant? Did you think that you were going to be able to live a life for free and not work? And I mean, the levels of disrespect and the trope of the Black woman, right? And the disrespect that we feel in the medical industrial complex, and these completely unfounded, unscientific misnomers that we somehow feel less pain, and that we are so hypersexualized that these pregnancies that we have, if you don't see us with a partner, that we're somehow become pregnant through promiscuity. All of it is wrapped up in racism, if we're going to be honest about it. And so when we talk about, you just played a clip before this started about how the totality of the disasters of where this country is heading is so much predicated on racism, and so much of this road decision and so much of this fighting that we're doing for our freedoms, for our bodies, is also because Black women, brown women are having less babies right now. And that is a threat to the system. That is a threat. They said they need more babies. And what's actually happening is that we're waiting longer to start families. We're getting more educated. We're investing more in our communities. And that creates a threat for this American society, doesn't it?
And I'm so happy, Tiffany, that you brought that up. It's so funny because my wife and I were literally talking about that this morning in this context when we were looking at the Hispanic population in the United States. And we are finding, and folks, this is real talk. According to the census, we're number 3. There are more Latinos and Hispanic members of the citizens in the United States than there are Black folks. And, I was like, asking my wife, I said, why do you think that is? And she was like, well, they have larger families and all of those things. And I said, but you know what? I bet you a part of it is that unlike them, Black folks, we've been here for so long. We've been exposed to so many different oppressive procedures in the hospitals in terms of childbirth. And we have taken in so many different types of medications, and we have been experimenting on. I bet you that that has all led to a slowing down of our growth, right? And she was like, yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree. And now you saying that, and I'm not trying to go down this Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole of conspiracies. I'm just looking, because the Black woman's womb is powerful. We all know that, right? And if you can slow down the birth rate of Black women, that have often been scrutinized and criticized because, and I remember growing up in the 80s and 90s and hearing adults talking about the fact, and I'm talking about political leaders saying Black women are having too many babies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you're talking about that 30, 40 years ago, we don't think that by 2022, that something hasn't been implemented, that something hasn't been injected, that something hasn't been swallowed or taken in to the bodies, that is slowing us down. And I think that we really do need to have a bigger conversation about that, because to your point, sis, like if we can't produce, if Black women are choosing to hold back on families, that's certainly your choice that sister's got. Right? That's a different point. But if a sister's saying, I want to have a family, and then find out that her body can't produce, can't hold the egg, or she's having complications, we got to look at, well, what's really going on? Now, there's some women that's going to have it, but if the numbers are showing that there's a vast majority of women who are able to produce for whatever reason, then I'm starting to look at, this don't seem right, Tiffany. The math ain't mathing.
Yeah, I mean, I just read earlier this week that, our existence is a predetermined, pre-existing condition. Being born Black in America, because of the amounts of stress that racism and poverty and disproportionate low income living and disproportionate levels of inopportunity create in our lives, that our actual birth and existence, being a Black person in America, becomes a pre-existing condition. And so, I mean, I think the science is starting to science, and I think that's also scary, because if you look at actual facts and not opinions, and you name the fact that Black women's bodies have, this whole reproductive justice movement started when you could no longer just take a Black woman, put babies inside of her, and make her property. When you enforced that, when we got here, the state made us do that. We became agents of the state, and therefore we became commodities of the state. And so now they don't have that power. And what you're lifting up is the fact that Black women, brown women, again, we are one of the most educated demographics in America. We are we're earning more money, we're taking more time, we're being more serious about our health and our priorities. And this country does not like that. It just does not like that.
I want to, and to that point, I want to get some feedback from our online culture crews, Tiffany, because folks are checking in, and as we having this conversation, the conversation is certainly bubbling and brewing on our streaming platforms of YouTube and Facebook. Take a look at this, folks. Real Brooklyn, you brought up a point, and you my guy. And we always, we may not always agree, but this one I think we need to bring Tiffany in on. Real Brooklyn, you said not having babies is not a threat. Having babies and not raising them properly is more of a threat. Tiffany, what can we say? What can we speak? Because I disagree. I think that and I'm saying this because if we look at how population growth inspires the thing, I get the point. I think that's a cultural point. The second point that Real Brooklyn is bringing up is saying not having babies and not being able to take care of. But not having babies is a real threat. Yeah. That is a threat.
And we don't have to get in. I'm not an economist. I am a trained organizer. But what I could say that we know, right, is that capitalism doesn't work as long as there's no lower underclass, right? We know that this country can't work. Like it's mathematically impossible for everybody to have a job, because if everybody had a job, then capitalism wouldn't work. And so unfortunately, I understand. I think I understand what Red Brooklyn is trying to say about the threat that, children, uncared for children present in our community, and I understand and have some thoughts about that. But I honestly think that as long as we can be subjugated as a people, it goes to all sections, right? When you look at the prison industrial complex and the disproportionate number of Black folks and Black men who are in prison, and what does that mean for people being able to vote? Well, then what does that mean for people being able to contribute to their community through being able to be part of ballot measures and other things that provide resources? And so as long as you keep a group of people under everything, in bad living conditions, in underfunded, under opportunized, all the things that we know happen in our communities, then those people are relegated to low income jobs, low wage jobs, and positions where they're not able to really lift themselves too far out of poverty, because not of any work that they have or haven't done, but because of the interlocking systems. And so if the systems aren't working, there always need to be people in there to stand them back up and reinforce them. If there aren't people there to stand them up, capitalism doesn't work. And that means none of this works. And I think we have to be really, really clear about that.
And I think that to go back to Real Brickler's point and your point, Tiffany, is that, if we're finding this, and this is why we're having a conversation, because just as much as we're talking about reproductive health and reproductive justice and women's rights, I think you have to couple that with other elements like family planning. That you have to couple it with other understanding. There are courses about family psychology and family counseling. Like, we do have to have a 101 session within our own community about the dynamics, the power, the structure of the family, and having these conversations, especially with the next generation. Like, you have to make intentional decisions. And it's still mind blowing to me that in 2022, Tiffany, that I hear women who say, I didn't expect this to happen. And I'm talking about when they lay down for man, unprotected sex, right? And they're like, I didn't expect this to happen. And it's like, well, what did you?
Well, I don't know what your upbringing was, but I don't find that hard to believe, because everybody doesn't get an adequate talk. Like, honestly, everybody's not getting that when you start your period, menstrual cycle, whatever you call it, then it's a cycle of X amount of days, and these amount of days are the days that you can get pregnant. And this is, and even if the man pulls out or has on a condom or there's always a possibility. Everybody doesn't get taught that. I know Black women, I'm 44 years old. I know Black women whose talk was the extent of it was, boys are bad. Don't bring no babies home. Stay away from them. You'll date and have sex when you're grown and out of my house. So I understand what you're saying. And I also think, we're going to talk about, let's have the talk, then let's really have the talk. Because some of our moms didn't get the talk, and sex was so taboo, and maybe some of their
I agree with that.
Age moms, and so it became a conversation about shame as opposed to the physical nature of what happens. And so I agree that we do have a lot of generational unlearning to do. We have a lot of unshaming to do within our families and with each other when it comes to something as simple as talking about our bodies, right? Not even necessarily sexual intercourse, and we didn't even get to pleasure, right? That's a whole
different. Hey, Tiffany, that's a whole different conversation.
I'm digging.
Like, yeah. You're trying to take us, because that's Handmaid's Tale type stuff. Right. Like, and then let me just say this, and this is the second time this week this topic has come up, Tiffany. I'm serious. Like, there has to be a conversation about, the culture that we're in, where women are having sex either for profit or they're having it for pleasure.
Why not both? See, but why not both? Why not both?
And you can have it for both, but hear me out. Hold on. You can have it for both, right? But the culture, I think the culture still, if you're having sex to get something from a man, right? The culture is telling us, well, sis, lay down, but get something from it. Get that money, or get that bill paid, or get something from that man. This is just me. I'm not a woman. But what about the choice to be pleased? What about your pleasure? Because you're still subjugating yourself to a man's whims instead of thinking about the interest. And of course, money is a driving force, but
I hope
sex is not a trend,
I hope everybody's having pleasurable sexual experiences.
That's what I'm saying that women aren't. Studies are showing right now that women aren't having pleasurable sex.
Yeah, that's a shame for them. I hate that for them. I didn't know we were going here, but let's do it.
I'm just making a point that women aren't being valued. Like the interest of a woman isn't being valued in a lot of different ways, whether you're talking about reproductive health, or when you're talking about just pleasure, women just doing things just for pleasure. The woman's interest is not being considered.
Women is just not being considered for real, to bring it back. Like, if you look at what is happening, there's a lot of issues in our culture. I don't know if we're having a private family conversation or which way we're going, but there's a lot of things for us to talk about in terms of our interpersonal dynamics, how we love each other, how we treat each other, how we are in community with each other, what I honestly, again, I'm 44. I miss when I was younger, my parents used to call other Black people brothers and sisters. I grew up hearing that it made community something tangible and identify people as being safe. I think when you're talking about the culture right now and what people are being advised to do or feeling influenced to do, it really does go back to capitalism, right? Because this new age that we're living in social media and everybody having this very comparative, get rich quick. I'm going to be this overnight. I'm going to be that overnight. That is not of our doing. And I think to have an honest conversation of what are the ways that we can reclaim, ourselves and reclaim some of these narratives that, again, are capitalist and money driven and try to put monetary value to people as opposed to what is truly at the heart of the human being. And so there's a lot of conversations that I would love to have. And that is bringing us back to the whole point was why we had the Day Without Us, because we wanted to name that, like, when you are talking about these levels of reproductive justice, when you are talking about the totality, right? All of these things, they are all tied together. They are our pleasure, our income, our freedom, our labor, our money, the opportunities that we have, the way that we can use our bodies, the way some of us are forced to use our bodies, the way use our bodies. It's all tied together. And at the end of the day, you want to be able to live in a country. I want us all to live in a country where we're free to make those decisions without the pressures of capitalism and the Supreme Court telling us that we're not actors.
I agree. I think we and to throw in there patriarchy, right?
Oh, girl, we not even gonna see. I'm calling you. See, that's how you know
the census didn't say, girl. I just took the Tiffany from guest to the home girl, yo. The class.
Girl, we are not going there.
I get it. No, real talk. I'm on it, and I'm humbled, and more importantly, I am with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, there has to be some very, very different conversation, because men can gain from this fight, right? When we're talking about reproductive justice, when we're talking about all of these things, Black boys in particular, I'm saying it. Black boys and Black men, we don't know en masse. Now, unless you had a father or a mother or parental figure or authority, an adult in your household that really broke this stuff down, the nuances, the things to consider. You know what I'm saying? I have a boy and a girl. I have a son and a daughter. My son is 9. My daughter is 3. So now that I'm inundated and talking to people like yourself, and I have been blessed to talk to so many others, the conversations is going to be different about sex, about your body, about for my daughter, her reproductive health, for my son, reproductive justice. Like, the conversations got to be different. You see what I'm saying? Because I know my father didn't break it down to me like that. He didn't. I mean, I knew what was happening, but there's so many different nuances. There are so many changing and evolving ideas. There are so many different views out there.
And you know what else? y'all better tap in because we ain't making these babies by ourselves. And
Come on, sis.
if they're
I
gonna,
think y'all had somebody else to help you.
I'm not making a baby by myself. And if they're going to criminalize me, what's going to happen to you? What if we make this decision together that we don't want to start our family right now? So what if you and I get in the car in Texas and try to drive to Delaware, and now we both criminals because we've decided that we want to focus on ourselves and growing our relationship and our finances before we have a baby? Y'all better tap in. Y'all better start thinking about this as an issue with the totality of all of our freedom, because we're there. Like, that's not coming. We're there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tiffany, I got to stop right here because, girl, you're going to make me go there.
Girl.
Hey, look. I'm real talk. I want you to consider us here at The Culture and on the Black Star Network a resource. We are having an in-house conversation, right? And it is an important one. So please, I want to, bring you back on. Let's have some deeper conversations about some of these elements, right? Because this is still a lot of things to consider. There's still like these got big ticket items, but then there are individual things. But more importantly, now that the day has passed, but the work continues, how should we support the work of Day Without Us?
I'm going to say, please tap into some of our very, very good sisters in the South who really need our support right now. They're leading really important reproductive justice work. And with all the things that have happened, they never got a break. And they've continued to provide our brothers and our sisters with, safe sex prophylactics, education, abortion care, and so on and so forth. So go ahead to our website, daywithoutus.com. Take a look at our partners. There's lots and lots and lots of good folks on there, not just reproductive justice orgs, sexual violation, organizations that deal with survivors issues, organizations that lift up community work, how to donate water in Mississippi. Just tap in. Like I said, this is about showing compassion and love and looking out for each other now and as we move forward, because I think we're all very clear on where these people are trying to take us in our communities, in our homes, and most importantly in this country. So I'm happy to come back, tap me in to talk about Black families, tap me in. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I'm a survivor. Tap me in to talk about sexual violence and support and healing. I'm ready. I want to have all these conversations with you and the family because we need them. I think you're muted, or maybe you can't hear me.
I'm muted. There we go. Tiffany Flowers, who is the campaign director. I had to get myself together from all of this talk. Who is the campaign director for A Day Without Us. Folks, again, here's the website. Take a look here. Powerful, powerful group of Black women that are deciding to take agency of their own choices, their own bodies, and most importantly, their own conversation about us. And it is a very, very powerful group. Tiffany, is there some, I know we just had the day, but is there any, either small events that are going to be happening in any cities across the country or anything that we need to keep our eyes on?
As of right now, I don't have anything to report back because we've shifted our work to actually election defense and making sure all of our folks can get out to the polls and vote safely and safely drop off your ballots. It's not about a candidate. It's about your choice and your right to exercise your vote. So if you want to be down with me and do what I'm doing, you can text Frontline to 30403 and come get trained up on how to be a de-escalator, how to make sure your auntie and your grandmama and them got some water and some pizza while they wait in long lines, and let's get it done.
Hey, look, we talked to a candidate that's running for the congressional district down in Florida, the 26th congressional district, Christine Olivo, yesterday. She said that a lot of our people, as a result of Hurricane Ian, communities are destroyed. A lot of Black folks may not be able to have to get to the polls on election day. And there is a concerted effort to keep those Black folks from getting to the polls because of where the state governor stands on a lot of these issues. So, if there are some additional resources that can be handled, or I don't know if there is some context that y'all have out in Florida, we would let us know, because I want to make sure that our people in Florida are not forgotten It's one thing to lose your house. Now you got to think about voting. And this is such a pivotal midterm election year.
Please, y'all. Oh man, please tap in.
We just don't want that level of. We don't want Mother Nature to be the culprit or become the blame for voter suppression. That's not her fault.
No, check out my man Desmond Meade in Florida, Clean Slate Initiative. That's the good brother that helped all those returning citizens restore their rights. They're on the ground down there doing amazing work to try to help our folks out. And I'm happy to come back. I would commit to coming back with some resources there. I really will.
That's beautiful. Tiffany Flowers, thank you so much for the great work that you're doing. And more importantly, Tiffany, thank you for being so good for the culture.
Thanks for having me. Peace.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Man, oh man. I love having these conversations, man. Y'all, my Wednesdays be lit. But I appreciate Tiffany, and I appreciate all of our fine guests that came on today to talk to us about the work that they're doing to talk about these issues. Hey, look, if you enjoyed the conversation, make sure y'all hit us up at blackstarnetwork.com. This is why we ask you for your support. This is why Black media is so important, so we can have these very, very unadulterated, unfiltered discussions about what's important to us and how these issues impact us the most. So go to our website, download the app for free, and sign on. Be a part of the Bring the Fan Club. Do what you can to show that you are standing with us as we continue to build this media platform. But look, you're not going to get these conversations anywhere else. You really aren't. And so it is a blessing that we have this platform, that we can have these discussions that are geared just for us. So go to blackstarnetwork.com. Look, thank y'all so much for tuning in this afternoon. Big shout out to all of y'all that are my online culture crew. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Make sure y'all follow me on all social media platforms. I love to connect with you. Hit me up on Instagram. I need more followers, folks. Y'all know my hacking situation. I got hacked and all that stuff. Now I'm building it back up because I'm connecting with you. Make sure y'all join me at The Real Farajii, also on Twitter at Farajii, and on Facebook at Farajii Muhammad. Let's continue to connect. Let's continue to build. Thank you for sharing all the tweets and all of the responses, but let's continue to build with one another. All right. Stay tuned. Up next at the 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is RMU, Roland Martin Unfiltered, with Big Brother Roro. He's always out and about. If you haven't picked up a copy of his book, White Fear, yet, woo, trust and believe. The ratings on the internet for this book is through the roof. People are saying that this book is necessary and important and pivotal at this present time. Make sure y'all pick up a copy of White Fear, and let's continue to support Brother Roland as he's doing the great work out and about in all parts of the country. All right. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll be talking, and we'll be back tomorrow for another exciting edition, for another set of great conversations, and another opportunity to connect with you right here on The Culture, only found here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Have a great evening, everyone. Peace.